Hello, I hope you're having a good day, and I hope you're looking to find some new games to get excited for, because that is what we're going to be up to today. I'm going to be showing you some of my favorite Steam demos and letting you know how I feel about them. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I played these demos during Steam's Next Fest, so I'm not entirely sure if they're going to be available to play when you watch this video. But regardless, I hope this video can, perhaps, give you something to at least get excited about. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the games. Garden Galaxy is a super interesting idea. The basic pitch is that you slowly build up this aesthetic little garden. There's this little pot that you sacrifice money to, and in return, get tiles from. Then, with those items and tiles, you build up your garden and fill it out with all kinds of plants and cute little props. All the models that you have to pick from look great. There's a very strong aesthetic sensibility with this game, and everything shares this kind of beige mom aesthetic, which I would normally use derogatorily, but I honestly think they do a pretty good job of adding color to that aesthetic without losing the core of what makes it what it is. As far as the gameplay goes, that's about it. You get coins from these little candle guys who pop up every once in a while, and each coin, when sacrificed, will give you objects from different categories. So water coins give you water objects, and tiles, gold, silver, and bronze give you different things from their respective categories, and so on. They also give you the ability to exchange coins of one kind for that of another with these little themed piggy banks. So, if you want water objects, you can exchange all your other coin types for water coins and load up on water stuff. It's a really simple premise, and it doesn't get any more complicated than that, at least throughout the demo, which seemingly was just the whole game, but with some objects reserved for the full game. Overall, I really liked this game. It's the kind of game that you can play for a long time with no real problem because it has such simple mechanics. There really isn't anything to get stuck on or mad at. The only thing I took issue with and hope that they improve in the full game is the way that they dole out objects. On the one hand, I think it's pretty cool to have them be randomized because that gives you a bit of anticipation and excitement at what might come out. But when you turn in all your coins and you get everything but the thing that you're trying to theme your garden around, it's pretty demoralizing. And that approach to progression, I think, is this game's biggest point for improvement. Again, I understand wanting to make the player feel excitement about what might come out of the pot, but I played this for a solid hour or so, and it really did feel like I had just started. I just got a bunch of crap I wasn't going to use, and with no way to request specific items outside of a vague category, it made it very hard to actually theme my garden intentionally. However, it's very possible that this is simply an issue with me and the way that I was trying to play the game. From the Steam page, they seem to be intending for you to create tiny little vignettes and not large-scale dioramas like I was attempting to do. And for these smaller little scenes, I think their progression system makes a lot more sense. You don't really need to stress too much about optimizing your stuff because you can always get more in a couple minutes, so I think my rather underwhelmed feeling was probably due to the way that I was approaching the game more than the game itself. Though I do still think there should be a way to request specific items instead of having to wait for them to be randomly spat out. I personally don't like gambling mechanics, and even though this is just about the best, most ethical way that they could be included, I still just don't find them very fun or engaging personally. But I recognize that that's just like my opinion. Overall, it delivers on the premise. You can make little snapshots of gardens and customize them to your heart's desire. It certainly does what it sets out to do, so I can't fault it for that by any means. And I don't think the more gambling-centric aspects are a deal-breaker for me personally, even if it's not my preferred playstyle. But if you want some mechanics I do really love, you should check out this next game. Trash Goblin speaks to the very core of me as a person. I am the titular Trash Goblin, and so it feels so good to just be seen, you know? All joking aside though, this is a game about being a trash goblin who is learning to run a trash refurbishing and reselling shop. You get little bags with items in them that you need to clean and fix up and then sell to a customer who needs that item. It's a pretty simple setup, really. If I'm being honest, I think the tutorial was maybe a bit too handholdy and went on for a tad bit too long. I think it could actually have been a lot shorter because the game is pretty self-explanatory and the mechanics are all really intuitive. This is a great game for you if you're looking for something to just kind of zone out to. It's super low stress, there are no stakes, you just go about your day cleaning things up and selling them off. Aesthetically, it has this kind of storybook/D&D vibe. I mean, you're a goblin after all, so the fantasy D&D association is kind of inherent. But the graphics are really pretty nice. The people are all these flat 2D illustrations, and they all look really interesting. They're all full of personality, and even though they don't really have any specific dialogue, you do still get a pretty good sense of their character through their designs. I really like that they make cleaning into a bit of a puzzle, especially the chisel minigame. You can kind of strategize how best to break the blocks off so that you can have more time and can therefore uncover more stuff and sell it. And the feeling of breaking off the chunks feels really good too. There's really good feedback to everything that you do in the game, and it's always satisfying to break off multiple blocks at once. The washing, however, I think could use some improvement, if they leave it in at all. I don't know if I think it's the most engaging mechanic in the game. If I'm honest, I think it makes sense because it adds the ability to strategize whether or not you want to waste time cleaning something, or if you want to just kind of hope somebody comes by who doesn't really mind how dirty it is. But I think the actual mechanics of using the sponge itself are a bit tedious, especially in smaller objects where it can be kind of hard to see where all the dirt spots even are. But overall, I think the game is a really great time. It's one of those games you can come home to and just chill out with. It's low stress and satisfying in all the right ways. It's not difficult or annoying, and the world that it's set in, while not particularly fleshed out, is absolutely peak vibes, and I love it. But now we'll make a hard pivot from goals-oriented business management to chilled-out city building in Honestly, I didn't really love this one. I think the graphical style is maybe a bit generic, but still good, and it does have a bit of its own personality. The mechanics themselves are pretty good. I like the low-stakes nature of it, and I love that you basically just make your own little town out of nothing. The issue that I have with it, though, is the actual feeling of doing anything in it. The snapping feels extremely inconsistent, and getting anything to go where you want it is one of the most frustrating experiences I've had in one of these kinds of games. And coming right off of Tinyglade makes the contrast all the more stark. Now, I want to be clear, I think the idea is good. It's kind of like Gordlets, but with a much higher polygon count, which is good. It adds fidelity, and that's something a lot of people do value. However, it really doesn't matter how good it looks or how good the idea is if it feels like ass to play. And frankly, that's how it feels to play this game. I do think it can be fixed though. I think they just need to give you much finer control over the placement of things and also just like panning around the camera. I love the way that Rekka handled this specifically. The way that they allow you to make fine adjustments to furniture and stuff that you're placing in the game was revolutionary to me. It's probably not the first time that anybody did that, but it's the first time that I remember using a system like that, and I want it in everything now. Please and thank you. And I think this game would really benefit from that kind of system because the one that they have, frankly, just isn't working. And it's not the kind of thing that you can just chalk up to creator intent or something like that, because there's no way that they wanted you to be this frustrated playing their game. I mean, it's not Dark Souls, it's a decorating game, so I think wanting to have a fluid and satisfying time isn't too unreasonable. I really don't have much else to say about this one. I think the idea is cool, though I do question the legs on this particular title because I think a lot of other devs have done it a lot better. And that's not to shit on this dev. I think if you're going to make an entry in a genre like cozy sandbox city builder, you really need a solid hook. Otherwise, you're going to get beat out by all the other titles that have something special about them that make them really stand out. However, a game that absolutely does know how to differentiate itself is our next game. Urban Jungle is a really interesting title. I don't often like to debate the difference between pastiche and knockoff, but sometimes it really can't be helped. If you've played Unpacking, some of this gameplay may seem oddly familiar to you. I know it sure did for me. In Unpacking, you follow a faceless character through their life, inferring major life events from the different objects that you unpack over their various moves. In Urban Jungle, however, the unpacking takes a back seat, and organization and decorating is far more pronounced. And that is where the game gets a bit more interesting, at least to me. See, this game is aimed squarely at those of us who want to pack our little apartments full of unique and interesting plant life. To that end, they have you pick out not just the plants themselves, but where they go and rearrange the room around the plants. They do this by making you not only take into account the aesthetic appeal, but also the needs of the plant. This is honestly a mechanic I'm a bit mixed on. On the one hand, I think it's a super cool idea to have to balance the needs of the plant with the overall layout of the room. But on the other, this can lead to situations where you kind of need to put plants into incredibly unnatural and illogical places just to fulfill their specific needs and optimize your points so that you can progress. The basics of the system are that each plant has a light need and a humidity need. I don't know if there will be more once the game fully releases, but for now it's just these two. So some plants will need light and humidity, or no light and only humidity, or any combination of the two. Fortunately, those needs are explicitly presented to you, but like I said, having those needs be required for progression means that you're not only going to be forced to put plants where you may not want them, but you'll also be massively limited in terms of creative placement. And this was actually an issue that Unpacking had as well. Having you be required to place objects into specific locations means that you end up feeling like you're trying to solve a puzzle and not create a nice space to hang out in. Now, I think the issue that I'm running into here is one of expectation and audience/media mismatch. I don't think this game is trying to give me the experience that I am expecting from it. I don't think this, nor Unpacking, are trying to give you a fully creative experience where you come up with your own perfect room. No, I think they're trying to innovate the ways that we do puzzle games. At their heart, these are both puzzle games, and I think through that lens and with that expectation, you can have a really great time with both. I kind of love that Unpacking has seemingly created a subgenre of puzzle games that imply story through unpacking someone's life. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think Urban Jungle is a good example of how to take ideas like that and run with them instead of simply making a soulless one-for-one copy. And another splendid example of just that is our next game. This game sees right into my little gamer's soul and says, "It's okay, I've got you." Burrow is a survival crafting game about a little mouse who comes back to their old house after having moved away to the city years before. You find your old burrow in disrepair and set about gathering the supplies that you'll need to fix it up. Those supplies just so happen to include the cutest goddamn little mouse sweater and pants I think I have ever seen. I mean, come on, how can you not like a game with wintry vibes and a mouse who wears a sweater, pants, and a little newsboy cap? Come on! But okay, let's focus on the game and not the fact that it has one of the most adorable video game characters I think I've ever played as. The core loop is, from what I can tell, the same as any other survival crafting game. You start with nothing but the clothes on your back, and you first gain an axe and progress from there in the usual fashion. Now, I've never played Don't Starve or its sequel, nor have I ever watched anyone else play it. However, I do know what it looks like, and from what I can tell, this is very much inspired by that kind of hand-drawn storybook style. But instead of being inspired by, like, Tim Burton, it seems to be much more inspired by things closer to Frog and Toad. It's very old Britcore, and there's a lot of, cross-hatching and thick wavy lines in the illustrations. Now, most of my kids' books growing up looked exactly like this, so they absolutely hit me right in the nostalgia feels. Though I do have to admit, I had a bit of trouble getting past the kind of Flash-esque animation style. I don't think this animation style is a deal breaker, but whenever I see it, it makes the game just feel kind of low quality to my brain. Kind of like when you feel a product that's light and kind of feels like it's made out of plastic, even if it might be just as strong and just as durable as one that's heavier and feels like it's more made out of metal, the one that's heavier just kind of feels so much better, at least superficially. So with that in mind, that's absolutely not a deal breaker, and I think I was able to get past it after a relatively short period because the illustration combined with the animation style kind of give you the feeling of playing with paper puppets, which I think definitely helps take that low quality feeling away, at least to me. The demo for this game is super short. After you repair the bridge and find your aunt, further progression is blocked. But from what I did play, I do feel like there is absolutely something here. I also really appreciate the seemingly more detailed story that Burrow has. Most survival crafting games have some kind of vague story to motivate you to progress, but I think the really strong ones that people get really invested in are the ones with compelling stories. So it's good to see the beginnings of that in this demo. All in all, this game is super strong. I absolutely want to check it out when it finally releases because I think if I can find the time to play it, it could very well be one of my all-time favorite survival crafting games. But that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed and perhaps you found a new game to try out. And I mean, why not? Demos are free, right? But regardless, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you here next time, and as always, happy gaming.